Cool. I think we're online. How's it going, everybody? Today, I am here along with James to do a quick review of the NewZ fan set. I'm just kind of break it down a little bit more in depth than we kind of have had a chance to talk about so far. In the group chat that we've got for the game, or the league anyway, we've got a little bit of discussion we've had here and there. We've had a couple comments on the posts, but I thought it'd just be kind of fun to take time to break down each individual card, kind of what we thought of what made us get to that point, and what we hope it does for the game.
Yeah, we just wanted to. That was kind of start kind of a thought experiment. You know, if the game hadn't gone to GT, but instead kept going through Z, what kind of shape do you think the game would have taken? And like if the game had come out today at the end of Z, they would have gone into Battle of Gods, Resurrection F, and then Super proper. And how would the game have expanded? What could be added to it? Without just being, over the walls, bonkers broken, because a lot of people have a problem with expanding because of the power creep of GT, and that's a legitimate concern. And so we didn't want to just go balls to the wall, crazy high power level, just kind of a progression.
Yeah, absolutely. The intent was to try to make cards that could feel like if the set that came after Kid Buu was New Dimension, like we called this set, and you could pull cards out of packs. The intent was that this would feel like you could have pulled these, and it wouldn't have been weird to have pulled this out of a pack and played it at a locals right after Kid Buu. With the league doing its own sort of new CRD and everything, just sort of is a natural progression to try to move into like what other potential options the game might have had. And with our kind of design goal, the intent was to make cards that either helped decks that needed help that already existed, or to kind of push ideas that didn't get a lot of attention. Example like the Saiyan Mastery that we'll look at in a second, being very Saiyan Heritage only inspired. Most of the Saiyan Heritage only cards are not the Saiyan cards you run. So just trying to dig some of those cards out of the back of your binder or out of your bulk box to try to build a new deck out of and just freshen up the format a little bit.
Yeah, and something else that I also considered was one of the aspects that I really like about Expanded is that each style has its own identity. In regular Score Z, it started feeling a little homogenous. I wanted each style to feel unique in what it was doing, and so thinking about these cards in the fifth expansion, I wanted to try to get my head around how would that be? How would that look in just regular Z?
Yeah. And obviously without introducing another, 150 card set into the mix, because granted, let's be honest, at the end of the day, we all barely have time to play in this league, let alone wrap our heads around a whole new set. That's why we don't introduce GT and stuff. Well, that's one of the reasons. But, giving 2 cards to a color is fine.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a...
Goodbye.
So we decided to give each style 2 cards and a mastery, and then some freestyle stuff as well.
Yeah, I think that's enough to wet the palate, I suppose is a good word for it. And to still feel like you're still playing the game that you knew and loved, and you weren't just thrown into because at the end of the day, we could all just play Pansy if we wanted 7 new sets of the game.
Right.
It's just a different game, and that's the point, is we just to try to find something that makes the game we currently play feel just a little bit bigger.
Yeah. A little taste of things to come.
Yeah. So without further ado, we're gonna kind of share my screen here. Instead of just holding cards up to the camera, we could totally do this, but it's just not nearly as fun. Hey, can you read that? Can you read that? Exciting thing though, everything is officially printed. It finally happened. They all got here and they look awesome, sleeved and great. So I'll get into that more later. But We're going to share the screen here and just kind of look at nice card images that you should be a lot more able to read. And starting with the Black Style Mastery. This one was definitely one we had a lot of back and forth on, even within ourselves before it was released. But then this is one of the ones that was most discussed within the group after it was dropped. And I will say that it was mostly James's brainchild. So I'll let him take over this one.
Yeah. So one thing I noticed starting this, I went back through and looked at each style's masteries throughout the life cycle of the game, and with Black in particular, it goes through a lot. It changes a lot. So you go back and look at like the Trunk Saga Mastery, it's just damage. Then the Cell Saga Mastery is discarding cards, which is a complete 180 on what Black Style was doing. Then like the World Games Mastery is this really bad board control kind of mastery. And then the Boo Saga Mastery is just gaining stages and anger. It's just like, what is Black trying to do here? So I wanted to try and kind of give Black its identity as sort of a more controlling kind of style. And so I'll read through this finalized version of the Mastery and then discuss it further. Once per combat, when an attacking form becomes successful, you may discard a non-combat card or ally in play instead of dealing damage. If you discarded a card from play with this effect, your opponent also discards a card from their hand. And this is the finalized version. There were a couple of versions before this, and when we posted those to the group, people thought it was way too strong. And so we dialed it back a little bit, because initially this mastery would let you remove from game non-combat cards or allies, and as well as being able to discard cards. And people thought that was too strong, and so dialed it back.
The option one or the other.
Yeah. So we dialed it back a little bit, and this still feels right. I know a lot of people that play League and that I've played with throughout the last cycle of the game really like that Black Style Trunks Mastery versus beat the crap out of people with all the extra damage. But if you go back to like the old rule books, and because the old rule books would explain like this style does this style does that, and Black was never about this massive beatdown style. There are other styles that are way more suited to that. So I wanted to create a mastery that more encapsulated that idea of sort of deception and control that Black should be about. And this is kind of just where that went. One thing I'm also just looking through the cards, the Black cards themselves. There are not a lot of Black cards that let you actually discard non-combat cards or allies in play. There are very, very few that do that. So I thought that was kind of a weakness of Black that could help be shored up with this mastery. But then I also didn't want to completely disregard the discarding cards thing. Now, the Soul Saga Mastery is still better at, if you just want to rip people's hands apart, then the Soul Saga Mastery is going to be better than this one. But this still does give you the option of being able to really manipulate the board and your opponent's hand in lieu of just doing a lot of damage. And I think that's more what Black Style is really all about at the end of the day.
Yeah, this does a good job, I think, of balancing the options of like what Black could be, because the cool like staple Black cards are all body destruction, chaos detonation, like stuff like that, just rip your opponent's hand apart, and that's why the Cell Saga Mastery sees so much play out of the gate. But otherwise it's just the beat mastery with the Trunk Saga one, and this I think gives you a decent balance of kind of trying to remind you what Black the color is about, while still letting you have some of the perks of the one of the more played masteries, the Cell Saga one. And I think it just kind of rounds the bases pretty nice and helps Black kind of remind itself of what its identity is, instead of having 4 completely unrelated masteries. This is sort of a mix of a couple.
Yeah.
When it first dropped, there were a couple people who were like, oh, well, there's just no reason to play any black mastery except this one. And I was like, well, I mean, there's not really a lot of reason to play most black masteries, so it's not a huge discussion. But I think this is the third version of this card, and I am pretty happy with where it ended up. For each of the masteries in the set, we did go with art from Super, specifically from Battle of Gods or from Resurrection F. Just the first two, still Dragon Ball Z movies. And Beerus is a pretty good representation, granted just aesthetically here, but of that kind of collected control that we were hoping that Black would have.
Yeah, and this is a great idea that Derek had, was using the movie art for the masteries, and then going back to Z and even original Dragon Ball for the art for the cards themselves, just to kind of give a feel of this set sort of being not only an anthology of Z and OG Dragon Ball, but then also this kind of sneak look at the future of Dragon Ball and how it progresses. I thought that was a really good idea, and it shows up really well with the cards and the artwork. It was a good call.
I liked it a lot. I'm going into our next black card here. We've got Black Planet Destruction. This one, energy attack, focused energy attack, doing 6 life cards of damage. Discard a battleground or location in play. If you've discarded a card from your opponent's hand of this combat, this attack can be used to stop an energy attack instead. Obviously, just having battleground location removal is cool. There are a lot of them that can really shut down a lot of the game, and there's a lot of strategies built around just getting City in Turmoil or Countryside out or Cells Arena and just like riding that out for the game. And so having a kind of built-in answer to that is nice. It's also nice that this plays well with most of the black card pool in general, where if you have stopped an attack, or if you've discarded a card, this is just a decent block as well. Obviously, there's most instances where you'd probably just use this as an attack or just removal, but giving it the kind of multiple options like this really does give you a little more versatility and gives it a nice like black staple kind of feel.
Oh yeah, and back in Saiyan Saga, there were black cards that had that modality of being an attack or be a block, and I kind of want to harken back to that a little bit. Also, just from a flavor perspective, this picture is from where Frieza destroyed Planet Vegeta, and Bardock tried to throw an energy attack, and this just absorbed it. So I like that flavor there, where this could also stop an energy attack because he stopped Bardock's attack with his own.
Yeah, I like that it's focused too.
Yeah,
makes it real specific to the. It's good thematic scene there. Discussing the masteries, as you can imagine, we'll probably have a little bit more length to a lot of them. Some of these are kind of just sort of run of them. Like this makes sense as why this card exists.
Yeah, so this one's pretty straightforward.
This next one, though, was the topic of some debate, and we'll get right into that one. Oh my, that scrolled real fast. Black Realization.
Yeah, this one, this caused some controversy for sure.
There was an idea to make it just freestyle and limit one per deck, and all kinds of things. But as James was keen to point out, there is a single other card in the game that mentions just dealing with floating effects, and it's another black card. So in an attempt, as we said, to kind of focus the identity of a color, this has that control, that disruption, and just kind of interrupting your opponent's game plan that we were trying to get black to be a little more focused on having. It's clear that they wanted that to be kind of the idea, but then it just got so muddled with other options. And we're hoping to kind of streamline that back into place a little bit.
Yeah. Trying to come up with this card, I was actually looking at that other black card, and I can't remember the name of it now. It shows Vegito punching the crap out of Super Buu. And yeah, it's the only Z card that specifically references floating, the actual term floating effects. And I was like, oh, that's a very unique space, in the game. And now, if you go into the GT cards, there's several cards that reference floating effects and messing with them, but I didn't want this to be super insane. And people, the incendiary reaction, as soon as you read this card, all of your opponent's floating effects now in. That might seem, super crazy, bonkers, broken strong, and it is a strong effect. But when you stop and think about what all floating effects your opponent could possibly have in a given combat, the ones you're usually worried about are things like time or physical stance or Napa's energy or things like that.
Super Saiyan effect.
Yeah, Super Saiyan effect. Things like Gohan's kick. That's a floating effect. And so, being able to actually squash those is a big deal, but it's not game-breakingly so.
Well, I think especially confined to like a singular color, it opens that opportunity too. It's also a combat card, so it's always spherical stuff like that.
Yeah, it's spherical.
I think with the idea of it being a freestyle card, granted they wanted it, we'll limit one per deck, whatever, but with a freestyle card, like to give this to, I don't know, Saiyan Broly or something, or a Piccolo multi-form deck, to just have this like on command, I think would be really, really bad. So I think having it locked into a color is at least a little bit better. Yeah,
because as a freestyle card, I mean, you could slot this. There's all kinds of decks that could really abuse this. Dragon Ball decks in particular could really take advantage of this. Because one of the ways to shut down Dragon Ball decks is with Gohan's Kick or Manjimu's Fury, stuff like that. And with black, I mean, you could run a black Dragon Ball deck for sure, but black is definitely not the preferred color or style you want to be trying to do that with. So keeping it to just black style definitely limits its game breaking potential, but it's still a really good card. And then also the secondary part of being able to declare Tukawaza, being able to discard a card from your hand to make your opponents also discard a card. It synergizes well with the new mastery as well as the Black Planet Destruction, and also just the general utility of being able to go one for one.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's obviously a strong card, but I think it's a thing that helps keep black when you have such a unfocused color. I think having a couple of strong cards to really shoehorn it into a spot does help, at least with the intent of refocusing into a spot like we had. I think something like this helps push that a little bit more.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Our next mastery here, card number 4, is the Saiyan Style Mastery. Saiyan Style is a difficult beast. Almost every Saiyan Style Mastery is great. Trunk Saga is awesome. Cell Saga is awesome. Boo Saga is awesome. The World Games one is fine. And like coming up with an idea for a Saiyan Mastery that would make you say, well, I'd run this over Boo Saga, or I'd run this over Cell Saga, was tough. So instead, we thought, well, what if the idea instead is to try to focus on, well, what do those masteries not give you? And, well, a big part of the Saiyan card pool are Saiyan Heritage only cards, and they unfortunately don't see a ton of play, despite how thematic that should be. This is the intent with this card, is to really open that up and to kind of reward you a little bit for playing some more of that. Some of those cards that don't see a ton of play. Really, like a lot of the Saiyan Heritage only cards aren't awful. They're just outclassed by slightly better or dramatically better just generic Saiyan cards. But having a mastery that corresponds with them helps it out quite a bit.
Yeah, there was really no way to make a strictly better Saiyan mastery without just power creeping the hell out of it, especially in comparison to like Boo Saga and Cell Saga masteries. And so trying to find an effect or an idea that helped me basically create kind of a new archetype of Saiyan style was really difficult. I actually I got a lot of inspiration. The inspiration for this mastery actually came from one of the GT masteries, which is the Saiyan Blitz mastery. And I knew I couldn't actually just basically say Saiyan Blitz mastery for Z because it would it'd be way too strong. And I was like, okay, how can I kind of repurpose this for Z and make it feel Z appropriate? And so this is what we came up with. Once per combat, if you made at least one successful attack, you may discard a card from your hand to draw a card. The discarded card is Saiyan Heritage only. Your opponent must pass his next attack phase. Your Saiyan Heritage only attacks do +1 stage and +1 life card damage. This gives Saiyan style really a level of utility it doesn't possess currently. It also encourages a style of deck building that is not just all out, attack. Because most of the Saiyan masteries revolve around having card advantage over your opponent and using that card advantage to just beat their face in. I didn't want to just replicate that again, but I still wanted it to feel, because Saiyan style overall is very offensive. You're wanting to attack a lot. And so I didn't want to make a Saiyan mastery that was just a complete 180 of that, but more of a just a different style of offense. Using this mastery, you're not going that crazy kind of blitzkrieg style attack, but you're still able to push your offense in a different way, and taking advantage of using Saiyan Heritage only cards. But there are quite a few, but a lot of them just aren't as good as especially like the Kid Buu and Fusion Saga Saiyan style stuff, which really just gets bonkers in terms of power level. Stuff like
every one of those cards is great.
Yeah, like almost every rare from Fusion and Kid Buu for Saiyan style is lights out. Like you get
it's just staple 3 of.
Yeah, like Saiyan Beef and Saiyan Lurch, and like Saiyan Ikki Rapid Slam. Like they're all monster cards. And so with there's really no reason to run stuff like your Saiyan Heritage only energy attacks and physical attacks and stuff like that when they don't have usually the damage is usually somewhat comparable, but then the effects are just off the charts for the non-Saiyan Heritage only cards.
Yeah.
So instead of
that's the thing with a lot of the Saiyan Heritage cards is a lot of them are like there's Saiyan flying kick or whatever that's +6 stages, which is tight, and then it's done. That's all it does.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of the Saiyan Heritage only cards that do that. They're just some attack for a pretty large amount of damage and then some negligible nothing effect. So finding a way to kind of incorporate that together, or it's the other way around where a Saiyan Heritage card does something kind of cool and then it's just a bad attack. Yeah. And so kind of trying to leverage that into, well, let's give the Saiyan Heritage attacks a buff. Gives you a little bit more reason to push them further. Well, if they don't have great effects, maybe they just do more damage.
Yeah.
But
and also
go ahead.
Even if your Saiyan Heritage card that you have in your hand is not great, you can pitch it to get another card, and then also now your opponent has to pass, and you're able to continue doing what you're trying to do.
Absolutely, and that's actually the point I was going to get into. This, as James said with the utility, this lets you Saiyan decks are very beat focused, so there isn't a lot of careful meticulous setup play in Saiyan decks. So there's not a ton of times where you dead hand into cards you can't just smack people in the face with, but there are a lot of Saiyan cards that aren't just that. And so having a card like this as your mastery allows you to build a deck that is a little bit more slow rolling, a little bit more focused on the setup, on a drill package, on a non-combat package. And then if you do run into a situation where you're just completely hosed and you're well, I drew a Dragon Ball and 2 non-combats or something like that, you just pitch a Saiyan Heritage card, draw a card, and then your opponent passes. You're able to pass, and then combat ends. It's not a skip, it's a pass. So it's an easy double pass, and that's just a quick get on a combat button. So there's a lot of utility that you can build around even in that lets you kind of open up the Saiyan card pool a lot in ways that that color really didn't do before.
Yeah. It also gives certain Saiyan personalities new life as well, like future Gohan or Bardock that don't traditionally see a lot of play, could take advantage of this mastery to get new strategies and build new types of decks that can make them a little more viable.
Yep. And then that just all harkens back to the original idea of the set is let's find a way to introduce not necessarily brand new mechanics into the game, but introduce things that either were lacking in implementation going forward, or find a way to make decks that just weren't seeing any play, that literally never came out of binders into sleeves. Find a way to give people access to those cards. Instead of making 100 new ones, let's just play the 200 that never see play. Yeah. How do we expand the card pool by just opening up what already exists? And that was the intent with a lot of this design. Saiyan Execution is a fun little one.
Yeah,
Saiyan Heritage only, of course.
My camera just I'll fix that in a second. But yeah, Saiyan Execution is another one that went through a lot of iterations before he landed on this one.
Yeah, there was a couple of variations of this, but really, again, just trying to focus in on color identity and what a color wants to do or what it's lacking in, and giving Saiyan style a kind of card that allows them to push themselves farther than they're currently going to control the state of the game a little better is a very Saiyan effect, and handling allies in play really helps Saiyans keep that focused beat idea kind of going on too, keeping your opponent having less options to mitigate your retaliation, if you will. Yep. If you have 6 physical attacks in your hand and your opponent has a boatload of allies, it doesn't matter. They're just going to offload it to all their allies, and it's never going to ping. So having something like this really helps kind of amplify what Saiyan is about. It's also bonus Saiyan Heritage only, so helps with the mastery. This one. Also, go ahead.
I was going to say too with the way this is done. Even if your opponent has no allies, you have this.
Even if they have no allies, you can do a flip.
Yeah. You can still pop the empower. It's an energy for 7. That's not nothing.
Yeah, it's actually an energy for 8 because you're a.
Oh yeah, with the mastery.
With the mastery. Yeah. But yeah, Saiyan Heritage only energy attack doing 5 life cards of damage. Raise your anger 1 level. Empower 2 if you needed it to be. Otherwise, discard an opponent's ally in play. You may pay an additional X power stages for this attack. For every 2 stages paid, remove an additional ally from the game. Remove from the game after use. Now, the first one, obviously, is just discard an ally in play. After that, if you're paying additional stages, those ones are removed. Now, removing allies is huge and tough, but in this case, you're paying your own stages for that. You're getting yourself closer to taking more of a hit in the face as well. Or, inversely, you're pushing yourself into the realm of being a Saiyan ally-focused deck, which isn't really a thing unless you're trying to do like a Saiyan Cell thing.
Yeah. And usually Cell ally decks aren't running Saiyan style. They're usually running either Namekian or sometimes orange. But because Saiyan style doesn't really have a lot of support for allies, there's one Saiyan style card that lets you get allies. Saiyan ally attacking is not very good.
Yep, exactly.
Because that was like some people brought up. I was like, well, this just makes ally decks crazy. Well, how many Saiyan style ally decks do you really see?
Yeah, so let's make Saiyan ally decks. Yeah. Go ahead and make them crazy because they don't exist currently.
Yeah, and again, speaking of which, it's also Bardock is the only Saiyan style personality really besides Cell that has any kind of ally focus.
Yep.
So this is a card that he could use to potentially help make that an actual reality.
Yeah. Turles sort of does, but mostly he just wants to kill his own.
Yeah. Turles is an ally deck only in the sense of their sacrificial pawns. Which is a unique mechanic. Turles is mechanically unique that way.
We have one more Saiyan style card in the set here. It's the Saiyan Body Crush. This one's a physical attack. Also Saiyan Heritage only, though. Physical attack doing +6 stages, or +7 if you're with your mastery. If your main personality's power level is higher than your opponent's for the remainder of combat, all of your opponent's attacks cost +2 power stages to perform. There's some obvious synergy in this with some stage lock Gohan kind of builds, with obviously Broly builds and things like that, where you already have a fairly large power level, and if you're just trying to beat your opponent to 0 as hard as you can, this is going to trigger a lot, and it's going to make kind of controlling the game that much easier.
Yep. Go ahead.
In multiple sort of versions of the game, Pansy and GT, etc., there are a ton of cards that are focused on if your power level is higher than your opponent's. And the score game has a couple of those in the like Broly subset cards, where they were kind of trying to toy with that idea, because Broly was just supposed to be a monster that you couldn't, physically keep up with. And they ran with that with like the rest of the game, but the rest of score didn't really do that. And so kind of refocusing that on like what the rest of the idea across the years of Saiyan style was, felt really good to kind of harken forward, I guess, into clearly they wanted the game to kind of push into that kind of idea, at least with GT. There's a ton of cards that do this. And then Pansy, different game, sure, but they had a lot of this kind of effect as well. And so making it fit that kind of grander vibe or grander vision for Saiyan style felt really good.
Yeah, and even in Z, we get Kibu stuff that helps keep your opponent from gaining power stages or making their attacks cost extra stages, and that's something that is pretty unique to Saiyan style. And so being able to kind of sharpen that identity of that style, being able to extend into those kind of mechanics just makes sense. And this feels like a very Saiyan style card.
This was one of the very first cards that we came up with, even when kind of Neil and I were just talking about this, maybe even being an idea. This was a card that I came up with kind of right out of the gate. And once James kind of hopped on the project with me, it from day 0, we were both like, yeah, this card's awesome. It just sort of fits. Everything about it's great. It's nice to see a nice Saiyan Saga Vegeta Goku throwback. It's surprisingly we never got this kind of scene illustrated in a card for something so iconic. It's surprising this never happened.
Yeah, there's a lot of untapped scenes and things from Z that weren't used in the game, and so being able to get some of those represented here was pretty awesome.
Yeah. Now we're going to get into the controversial color. Orange.
Yeah.
This one had some reactions as well. Your orange style energy attacks cost -1 stage to perform to a minimum of 0. You can't have negative costing attacks. Once per combat, as an if successful effect to an orange style attack, you may search your life deck for an orange style drill and place it into play at the end of combat. If one of your drills entered play this turn, your orange style energy attacks are focused until the end of combat. This again is a version 3 or so of this mastery. It started with orange style attacks couldn't be stopped by certain things, couldn't be played around in certain ways, and this kind of was the best way, I think, to capture the idea that we had, that what we wanted the card to do while still making it not just absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, orange was another one that was hard to come up with an idea with to begin with, because so many orange style masteries are really good. The Blue Style mastery is obviously bonkers. The World Games mastery is also pretty good for what it does. The Soul Saga Mastery is also pretty good. It provides a unique effect. And then the OG, the Trunk Saga Mastery, doesn't see much play anymore. But I like that idea because orange, again, going back to like the rulebook descriptions of the styles, it is literally called the Cosmic Style. It's supposed to be, it was originally supposed to be based on energy attacks, which was hilarious because in Saiyan Saga, the beginning, there are no orange style energy attacks, not one. And then as the game evolved, orange started becoming more drill focused, and that became really kind of an orange staple. The orange is always, doing stuff with drills, and so I wanted to kind of get a mastery that benefited energy attacks and still had something to do with drills. It's not something we hadn't seen yet, and yeah, it was hard to make this one not crazy bonkers. And yeah, I feel like the original concept was your orange style attacks could be stopped by could only be stopped by physical energy combat cards, and that turned out to be way too strong. So dialed it back to just the energy attacks and then just making them focused, which still accomplishes the feeling of the idea.
Yeah.
And then also being able to go get a drill, but it was going to play until the end of the turn. That felt pretty good too, just because, again, we're not. I didn't want to try to supplant or replace like the Buu Saga Mastery, anything like that, and this helps it have its own place.
Yeah, agreed. The having a drill interplay this turn. Your attacks are focused means that you at least have to kind of build into that. Granted, there's a lot of orange that already wants to do, playing in drills and stuff, but you have to focus. You really have to focus building their deck into that avenue of orange if you want this to pop as often as you'd like it to. The entering at the end of play obviously won't trigger this, so it's a separate kind of clause, so you'd have to have something else that's going to do that, which just is the end of the day. The goal was to make you scratch your head and think again, how do I build a deck differently now that this exists? And we didn't want and that's that goes both ways. So like this, the idea is to encourage you to build a deck to play cards you wouldn't normally, or to amplify something a color didn't normally do. But inversely, that means as a defense as a player as well, you have to now plan that this could exist. This means you're going to have more. And then especially like the first version of the mastery, where it couldn't be stopped by, or it could only be stopped by physical or energy attacks or energy combat cards. So we were like, okay, well the idea then is, yeah, that hurts real bad right now, but it just means people have to start building their deck differently, and you have to stop running generic stop all stuff like that, or at least move away from that a little bit, which is in the long run not a bad thing, because there's so much of this game that's like, I'm going to build a new deck. Here's my 26 staples, and you put it in every deck. You have your Super Saiyan effect in every, stuff like that. It just goes in everything. And a card like this, at least in the version it was before, even a little bit now with Focused, is it does incentivize your opponent to say, well, if I'm going to start running into this mastery more, which you very likely would. This is still great with 19, 20. I mean, any of the orange energy MPs like that, especially. But this is going to incentivize your opponent on defense to need to build more of a focused energy block kind of idea into their deck, which I think is a great idea in the long run. Having way less of that generic stop all good stuff is a good thing in my eyes. I understand that it takes away a little bit of that eternality that Scorzy kind of has. We stop having our legacy deck you can't ever change, but I think that's kind of the point, freshen up what exists and just help us find, the joy that we had of building and learning this game when we hadn't all played it for 22 years.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like that idea as well, because that was something that was actually kind of a problem with not with Expand in particular, but with Focus GT initially, was there were no focus attacks, and so Omni blocks were absolutely, you had to have, these particular Omni blocks in your deck, and so how do I put this? Making your opponent aware that you can't just run every freestyle omni block in the book in lieu of running actual either physical or energy defense cards.
Yep.
It helps. Proper deck building strategy. It incentivizes you to actually put a little more thought into what blocks you're running.
Exactly. Anytime that you can take away the idea of a deck just being good stuff plus whatever sprinkled color you want it to be is way better for the game in the long run. It incentivizes being a better deck builder. It incentivizes being a better player and not just running the staple good stuff answers to everything. That just those, not to make the format weaker or something, but like that, it gives even people who aren't great at the game just easy outs to things instead of rewarding a better player, a better deck builder. It's just like the easy button to have a giant package of good stuff in every single deck. Having cards that exist like this that force your opponent to stop relying on that is better, I think, for overall design in the long run. Games get stale when every format of every game that's ever existed gets stale when decks just become good stuff the deck. And unfortunately, there's so much of Score Z that is good stuff cards the deck.
Yeah.
But let's introduce some good stuff card the deck.
Yeah.
Orange Physical Resistance. Weirdly enough, Orange doesn't have one of these. It does now. Stop a physical attack. Gain 3 power stages. If you have 3 or more Orange-style drills, or if you've performed 2 successful Orange-style attacks this combat, stops all of your opponent's physical attacks for the remainder of combat. Limit 1 per deck. Remove from the game after use. This was a, Fusion Saga sort of card line?
Yeah.
Every color kind of got one of these limit 1 per deck, do something to stop attacks for the rest of the turn. And Orange, for whatever reason, just doesn't have that. And granted, they've got some cycling into repeatable shield drills and stuff like that, so there's some kind of built-in avenues to get around that. But Orange just didn't have this card. So this was a fun one to kind of build while still, let's give Orange the card it didn't get that the other colors got, but let's understand why Orange didn't get it, and so let's make it still have a decent stipulation to getting 3 Orange-style drills is not hard, especially in an Orange deck, but it does at least mean you can't just right out of the gate just block all physicals with this. You have to have at least had some kind of setup, or you have to have been focused on an Orange-style attack deck, which a lot of times people aren't. They build Orange decks to have this slew of Orange drills that make your attacks bigger, make your opponents stop, or stop your opponent's attacks, so that their then freestyle attacks can be huge, or MP attacks, with TNs and stuff like that. This forces you to build more on color and to focus on what exists within your Orange card pool, as opposed to just playing, well, I'm going to set down my joint restraint drill, I'm going to set down my shields, and then I'm going to play my giant freestyle attacks for +4, plus MP bonus, plus mastery bonus, whatever I get, and just smack with that. Orange isn't supposed to be that, and you're just using the orange color to supplement things that aren't orange, and this incentivizes you to not do that.
Yeah. So the Fusion Saga cycle that each color got, they each got a something that dealt with physical, something that dealt with energies, and I really like the cycle in general, just because each set is it was unique to the style. Like the Saiyan style physical stop only works if you're at a higher power rating than your opponent, and then the energy stop lets you use your card advantage to help stop energy attacks. But then Orange didn't get an actual card like Orange Physical Resistance. They instead got Orange Protection Drill, which if you stop a physical energy attack, you can discard the, you can, I can't remember if it's discard or remove. Either way, you get rid of the drill, and then it stops all attacks of that type render a combat limit 2 per deck. And that fit with what Orange was doing at the time, but it also really forced you better be running an Orange drill deck in order to even take advantage of this. And that felt bad. That felt really bad, especially when Fusion Saga came out. I was playing Orange style, and I was like, well, if you're guys not running Orange drills, this kind of sucks. Whereas none of the other cards in that cycle for their styles really shoehorned you like that. So like, okay, how can we make an Orange style card that is more in that vein? And this fits pretty well. Because each of the other style cards in that cycle will either have a stipulation you have to meet, or they have some other effect besides just stopping the attacks. Like the blue physical stopper it stopped a physical attack, but then for rest of combat, like all your cards without endurance decks gain endurance 3, and so it's not a stop all, but it gives you a big benefit for using it. But then like the black physical stop all, it's not. You can only use it if you had landed a successful physical attack in the previous phase. And so you had to come up with a Orange stipulation, and obviously the drills are kind of a no-brainer. And then being able to, the other stipulation of having landed 2 successful Orange attacks already got us into actual Orange beatdown, like what you were saying, like actually using Orange cards to do attacks as opposed to using stuff like carpet attack and other stuff like that to beat your opponent up.
Yeah, I think this is a cool card. It's a good stop is strong. It's a limit 1. It's removed from game, and in a 3-card hand, you'd have to have perfectly landed 2 Orange attacks and then have this one as your last card to have it even work if you didn't have drills in play. So I think there's a lot of times where this card isn't even awesome. It's just kind of cool to have, I think, as a one-of, and it's nice to give it to a color that didn't actively have one.
Yeah. Real quick, I also want to say I loved getting this art piece for this one. There's not a lot of shots used from the first Cooler movie, and this one just really nailed it.
There's so many iconic shots from that movie too, and the game really didn't do enough justice to that. Yeah. I think that this is it's great to have a little more representation of that. And speaking of things without representation, Dragon Ball art.
Yep.
And a little throwback to the mastery here. Orange Roundhouse. Power, Endurance 3. Orange card, Endurance, naturally. Physical attack doing +4 stages of damage, and Power 2. If successful, any drills waiting to be played at the end of combat are played now. This obviously most accurately just lines up with the mastery's effect of putting a card out of play and then having that effect of if a drill enters play this turn, your attacks become focused. This just makes that happen. So it's just a natural include with that card. But it also is a good throwback to a card that's pretty cool that doesn't, unfortunately, not see a ton of play. Orange Searching Maneuver, in grabbing a drill or Orange style drill that just sits outside of play until the end of turn and comes into play. So if you mastery and Orange style or Orange Searching Maneuver in a turn, end it with a roundhouse that hits just to play both of those drills. I mean, that's pretty cool just to get that in the middle of combat. It is later in the actual string of events of a combat, so it's not something you're going to be able to stack a huge advantage into because Orange isn't about its hand advantage. So having used a mastery, having played a Searching Maneuver, then played this, you're not going to have much to do with your focused energy attacks for the rest of the turn. So it's a thing that will push that aspect a little bit further, but without breaking any of it. I don't think there's not a way. You're never going to be sitting on like 6 cards with an Orange deck unless you've got, you've got some options like, what is that? Sand drill with red. It's the spontaneous.
Yeah,
drill.
Spontaneous drill.
Where you'll get a card back in the hand if you get hit. Like stuff like that will happen, of course.
Right.
And
You know,
depending on the MP you run, you can get some more cards in hand and things like that. But Orange has never been about having this like ludicrous hand size. So this is, I think, a card that's going to be tough to really break, but I think will be really fun to utilize, especially with that mastery.
oh yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and I love the Dragon Ball art. Like, you know, Dragon Ball got, you know, next to no representation in the Score Z, and so being able to get some OG Dragon Ball art into this is really cool.
Yeah.
Because I think like the only one, I know there's Jackie Chun's Energy Attack or whatever it's called.
Yep. And there's kind of Fond Memories.
Yeah, Fond Memories. Yeah.
That's sort of a throwback art.
Yeah. Yeah, but then like that's it.
Yeah. We'll see a little bit more Dragon Ball art as we go on.
Yep.
Next card here, we're going to get into our Namekian cards. The Namekian Style Mastery. When entering combat, reveal the top card of your life deck. If it is a Namekian Style card, put it into your hand and raise your main personality to its highest power stage. If it is not a Namekian Style card, place it on top of your discard pile and draw a card. At the start of your rejuvenation step, you may place the top card of your discard pile at the bottom or top of your life deck. James, you wanna run with this one?
Yeah. So this is one of the first masteries that I really worked on for this set, because Namekian really fell off towards the end of Score Z. Like even like the Boo Saga Namekian Style Mastery is not very good. No one uses it. It's not very, and then even like just the number of Namekian cards we got was severely reduced. We get a couple in Boo Saga. Granted, the ones from Boo Saga are really good, but they're few in number. And then Fusion Saga, we got like 2, like 2 or 3. And then in Kid Boo, I think there's literally just the Namekian Remedy Drill. Yep. And so Namekian was one of those. It's like, man, Namekian really needs some help to actually be really viable outside of like Cell Namekian Ally.
Yeah.
And so looking through the Namekian masteries, and Namekian actually has kind of throughout its life cycle, kind of retained its identity of either gaining power stages or rejuvenating cards, and also like high endurance. Namekian's kind of kept that. Yeah, it's probably it's the only style where the masteries all achieve that those things to some effect. The only exception being the World Games mastery, which ironically is the one most people use because it's basically just it's a side grade of the Cell Saga Saiyan mastery.
Yeah.
Which it doesn't feel very Namekian in style, but it's very good, so people use it. So for this one, I was like, okay, how to make a Namekian mastery that is not that A is actually good and useful, and B doesn't just give some overwhelming advantage that just makes a superior all the Namekian masteries. So first thing I did was I looked at the Trunks Saga Namekian mastery, which was my personal favorite Namekian mastery.
Yeah, I like that one a lot.
Which lets you draw a bottom card, you discard pop, it's Namekian Particle. And I was like, okay. I like the gaining power stages aspect of Namekian, how to put that in here. And but then also I didn't want it to just literally be Trunks Saga Mastery. So I was like, okay, what if we do it off the life deck instead of the discard pile? And while World Games Mastery notwithstanding, Namekian hasn't really been about card advantage. But I didn't want to punish Namekian style for occasionally hitting non-Namekian cards, which is where the clause for if you don't reveal a Namekian, you just discard it and get to draw another card. And then I wanted to figure out a way to kind of put the rejuvenation aspect of Namekian in there in some way, and so that mastery kind of helps itself. At start rejuvenation step, you get your top card and you put it on top or on the bottom. Well, if you want a Namekian card, if it's Namekian, you can put it back on top, or if it's not, you can put it on the bottom, and it helps with the mastery, and also gives sort of that rejuvenation flavor that Namekian has.
Yeah. Top decking your rejuvenation step is tight.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I think this is an awesome mastery. I'm not much of a Namekian player myself. Just never cared enough about the Namekian characters. But this is a mastery that I think is really interesting and will help open the door a little bit more to some of the underplayed MPs. Getting Nail some play and stuff like that. This mastery by itself, I don't know will necessarily do that. Although getting to keep your highest power stage will help with some of those lower power staged Namekian characters. It's one of the big downfalls of Namekians is their relative strength to the show fell off real fast. Character to character, no Namekian kept up with the Saiyans or the villains that had to fight Goku, and Piccolo only sort of did because he showed up quick enough to push the plot armor button and leave. Yeah. So having something that will power your MP back up to full at least will help keep yourself a little bit more in the game with some of those smaller Namekian MPs.
Yeah, and that's you hit the nail on the head as far as problems with Namekian in general. You're very limited in the personalities you can use, and like Nail's not very powerful. Piccolo is not very powerful either. But he has the most variety of personalities. And then you have Cell. But frankly, if you're running Cell Namekian, you're running allies. There's no reason not to do that because that's one of the better deck archetypes there is. So being able to give a different kind of Namekian style mastery that might help other. And also technically you could run Dende, but.
Yeah, but if you're running Dende, you're not doing a normal Namekian deck anyway.
Yeah.
You're playing weird Dende Spirit Bomb junk.
And then and then you also have Pycon, which is another weird case because Pycon can use a Namekian Tokuwaza, but he can't use Namekian Heritage only, and which does cut him off of some cards, but. Pycon's also a person that doesn't see a lot of play. Like even when World Games came out, like Pycon did not see a lot of play.
Which is a shame. Pycon's a cool character.
Yeah.
He's as Namekian or not as he is, he's a cool character.
Yeah.
And they obviously he had to be made Namekian. He just happens to be green, so that helps. But they just what other Namekian could you have given to that set?
Yeah,
Piccolo's in World Games Saga for like seconds.
Yeah, and that's something else too. Like way down the line, that Dragon Ball Super gives us is more Namekian stuff. That's for way further down the line.
Yeah, the way farther down the line, Namekian or Super does at least introduce some way cool new Namekians. So if this is ever a thing that matters, if this NewZ fan set idea thing is something that people latch onto and want to run with, like 4 years from now, we can look at a Salanel card or stuff like that.
That and Piccolo himself actually does things in Supers.
that too. And then you could even go into like Piccolo trains Gohan again, and you can get back into Namekian Gohan stuff and
really also and Piccolo was in the Universe 6 tournament.
Yep. Namekian Dominance is a card that we used to again really help with the fact that Namekians get kind of pooped on as far as overall power. Raise your power, your main personality, to its highest power stage. Place the bottom 3 cards of your discard pile at the bottom of your life deck. If you declared a Tokuwaza, for the remainder of combat, the base damage of all Namekian style physical attacks is considered to be 4. Obviously, a lot of synergy to weak Namekians here. Powering yourself back up to full, awesome. Bottom 3, rejuvenation on color. That has to be there. It's Namekian card. But making the attack table be 4 is awesome. Even if you get zeroed out, your attacks are still going to be at 4. Even if you're in B all game, which is the highest that most Namekian MP cards go, you're still going to hit for 4. You're still going to punch a Kid Buu MP for 4. And that's awesome. But I think it also encourages physical Namekian style decks. Part of the Namekian kind of identity with gaining power stages and stuff is most of the good Namekian cards are energy attacks. And Namekian has a couple of really cool physical attacks, but they're hindered in the fact that a physical attack out of B all game isn't that good. So this kind of alleviates some of that and opens up the idea to more of a physical-based Namekian deck, and one that is not hindered as much by the fact that its power level can't quite compete because, you know, power levels are bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Namekian cards are probably some of the most pushed in this set just because they kind of needed to be.
Yeah.
The only reason people run Namekian at all anymore is, like I said, you're going to hear Namekian sell a lot because it's literally the best Namekian deck you can run.
It's not even like the best Namekian. It's like actively one of the best decks. Like,
yeah.
And it doesn't even play like a Namekian deck's supposed to play, and that's a shame. It's, you know, and that's, you know, like I was saying with some of the other decks before, when a deck is a color but doesn't play by its color, it just uses the fact that that color supports the thing it wants to do on its own. It really isn't a Namekian deck at that point. It's not an orange deck at that point. It's not a black deck. It's a X deck with black support. And we really wanted to focus the idea more on, like, let's push the idea that you are building a color. This is your favorite fighting style. That's literally what Tuaza is.
Yeah.
And your favorite fighting style should not be 11 cards in your deck.
Yeah, for sure.
The last of the Namekian cards here is Namekian Gut Shot. This is a combat card. To be honest, I think this is supposed to be a physical combat card.
Yeah, it's definitely supposed to be a physical combat.
That's a mistake on my part. I missed the change on that. But the template itself defaults to combat. So imagine this one says physical combat.
Yeah.
Power, focused physical attack, doing +4 stages of damage. Discard an opponent's ally in play. Empower 3. Just gives you a great option for the Namekian physical kind of push we were going for. But if not, if successful, for the remainder of combat, your opponent cannot use endurance against your Namekian style attacks. Obviously huge synergy there. Really trying to push the idea of what can we do to artificially amplify the strength of an Namekian MP. And this card, as well as dominance, both really accentuate that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. They, like I said earlier, one of the big problems trying to run any kind of physical Namekian deck is your MP is not going to stack up against, you know, most of your Saiyan MPs or Kid Buu or anything like that, and being able to get your damage across, what damage you do get across, you want it to stick.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, and also Namekian doesn't really have access to preventing damage prevention like that. So this really opens the door for more of a offensive type of Namekian deck that's not ally based.
I agree. I think the Namekian cards and the Saiyan style cards are two of the colors that really get the most kind of, here's the new idea. Orange, you know, kind of let's run some cards we haven't run in before. Black is let's sort of focus the color a little bit. But Namekian and Saiyan, even a little bit red, honestly, are all very much like, well, let's kind of rebuild the color.
Yeah.
Let's give it another idea. What is the thing it's not doing? Let's try to make it do that.
Yeah.
And obviously, we don't want every color to just do everything, but Namekian is so, its shortcomings are so short because it
Yeah.
physically, no pun intended, can't do certain things, because Namekians weren't a part of the show past season 2. So they just naturally fell out of the power creep of the game.
Yeah.
And to introduce something that allows it to catch back up a little bit, I think is a really positive thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think this is a 25 card set. If we're not writing a college dissertation here, this should probably be a 2-part video. We're about halfway through the set here. Going next, we'll come into red, finally blue, and then freestyle at the end, along with a couple allies, which we'll follow up with here very shortly. But I hope that the idea with videos like this is to really kind of highlight what we were thinking when we were building it, what the intent is to amplify the game, and that the idea is not to just force some busted cards into the format and like watch the world burn. There's a lot of thought into why these exist, and obviously none of these have to be finalized ideas either. Like this is the idea we ran with. This is after bouncing it back and forth, after kind of theory testing it through different cards and situations. This is kind of where we came to. But if the beauty of a fictional card like this is that if we decide that Namekian Gutshot is completely busted, you can just change it or get rid of it entirely. And that's what we hope in the long run, that obviously if we all sit down and start playing right out of the gate with some of these cards, although I don't personally think any of them do, but maybe we'll find something that just like ruins the game. And that's completely fine. That is the intention, is to find, if that happens, we want to know that.
Oh,
And
yeah,
we fix it, and we want it to feel like these were a part of the game that we all know and love, and that the only thing they do is just improve the experience. None of this is supposed to make the game worse or feel less fun or more busted. Like, none of that's supposed to be the goal. It's just supposed to help you feel like, well, I own some cards I can't currently use. Let me use them. And that's sort of the goal with every card in the set.
Yeah, just to breathe new life into the game. No pun intended, but to expand the game into new areas or reinforce old areas, and just being able to see where the game could have gone, and do it in a way that doesn't ruin the experience that's already there.
Yep.
Yep.
And at least 12 cards into the set here, I feel like every card so far has done just that.
Yeah. I've got a dip real quick.
Oh yeah.
I'll be back for part 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for hanging out, James. We'll see you next time. Thanks, guys, for watching. If you made it this far, we'll be around for part 2, right around the corner here, and I hope that you guys in the long run become just as excited about this as we are. Thanks.